All right, hey, thanks very much for coming along to Startup Garage. It's really cool to see a bunch of repeat faces, and I've just been having a bunch of conversations with people that have turned up at the last few events and have really appreciated the types of things we're doing. Getting great reports back from everyone that went to see GPS last time. It's really cool that we have local companies that are inviting us into their inner sanctum and showing us the workings of what makes a great startup tick. And we have some great program coming up over the rest of the year, so keep in the loop. We don't confirm things till about a month out, 3 weeks out, so do keep an eye on the channel, and we try to notify you when a new event comes up. So it's really good to have you here. Thank you very much. It is also interesting to me that we have pretty much a full room when we invite a former lawyer from Auckland to speak, and we've had a number of internationals come through with less numbers. I don't know what that says. But what it says to me is Andy has got a brand throughout New Zealand. He's a man with something to say. He is very well known in the startup space, and for good reason. And he's going to tell us all about that tonight. If anyone hasn't figured it out, the toilets are down here. If there's an emergency, just everyone run for the stairs. You can jump. It's only one floor. If you go down the middle, it's quicker. And but no, we'll take you out the right way. Just look for people waving their hands madly. Oh no, there'll be one. Me and Zahara will usher you out if there's an emergency. We'll be doing about 20 minutes with Andy. There'll be some Q&A afterwards, so feel free to hammer him with some questions as soon as he stops talking. And then we'll be topping up the jugs, and you feel free to stick around for a while and meet each other, pepper him with some more questions, and get to know the crowd. But that's all from me. I'd like to hand over to Mr. Andy Hamilton. Round of applause, please.
Hey Nick, so can everyone hear me? All right? Yes? Cool. So Nick, thanks very much. Stefan as well. Icehouse has a partnership with Lightning Lab in Auckland. We're the delivery partner of Lightning Lab up there, so we're very grateful for the opportunity to actually deliver that there. And just a heads up, Lightning Lab Christchurch applications close in 2 weeks' time. So if any of you know any startups or you have a startup and you're interested in being part of that, it's 2 weeks before applications close. Other thing, I don't mind anyone interrupting on the way through. Anyone's got a question or a comment, Steve, you can't comment, but anyone else, if you've got anything to say, just put your hand up or shout out. And what I'm going to talk about is just two things. The first thing is, I think it says a metric, a secret metric, and which is something I've been at the Icehouse for 14 years, a long time. As I've become more and more, I've started to think about what does all of the work that we do with startups and owner managers add up to. So I want to share that with you. And then the second bit is the pattern matching. Just a few things that I've observed as I go through. But first, and I have no original IP. Everything I get off someone else. Anyone seen this before? Hands up, anyone? Anyone seen it? Yep. What's it from? Anyone? What's the book? Some of you must know. If any of the startups in Creative HQ have not read this book, they should be in a lot of trouble. This is from Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 book, all right? And really brainy people and consultants can make the really complex amazingly simple. I want you to think about this as your country, your company, and yourself. And to think, are you definitively optimistic, definitively pessimistic, or indefinitely either? And so let's take an example. America. Are they optimistic or pessimistic as a country? Optimistic. Yep. And are they definitively or indefinite? And just for clarification, definitively means they've got a plan. Indefinite means no plan. So America? No Americans may answer, because they'll probably just be all Republicans hiding from the Obama world. What do you think? Definitive or indefinite?
Does the plan have to be good or sound?
No, it's got nothing to do with the plan shit or not. It's, do they have a plan? So I would say just optimistic, definitive.
Yes.
China.
Yes, same.
No. No.
They are pessimistic.
Pessimistically definitive. So they say. Now, New Zealand. So I would say on the state of the macro economy, and I did vote for National, is that they're definitively optimistic. But I would say on the state of enabling a future for New Zealand, that from a microeconomic perspective is a lot more wealth, indefinitely optimistic. They have no plan around how to create significant wealth on the ground from companies. And whether or not they should have a role is a different question. When you also look at yourself as well on this, and you start to say, so Nick Churchhouse, are you, for yourself, optimistic or pessimistic?
I'm optimistic.
And do you have a plan? Or should we ask Stefan?
No plan.
No plan. What I found with this matrix is quite helpful is dealing with some startup entrepreneurs and saying, well, look, where do you sit? And then you say, exactly, you've got no fucking plan. How are you going to be successful? Or actually dealing with $20 or $30 million owner managers or family businesses who are pessimistic and indefinite, but they've got like a $30 or $40 million business that makes 5. So as a tool, I found it really, really helpful. And I just always want you to think about country, company, individual, because you can be different. Right, first bit, New Zealand's secret metric, 2,318. Why is that? Anyone know what that is? Could be 2318. No, it's 2,318. Anyone? SMEs? SMEs? No, 430,000. Anyone?
Is it the year we get back to positive fiscal?
No, don't be. Hey, you're an optimist. Don't be cynical. That's the ex-journalist coming out. Okay, 2,318 is the number of firms in New Zealand that have more than 100 employees.
Wow.
Right? Does that sound like a lot or small? Small. Okay. Average employment size of those 2,318 is 430, and they represent 48% of all employed people in New Zealand. Now, the thing about this metric is that relative number is not the problem. That relative is the same as many other small economy countries as a portion of the total. The problem is the relative size of our big guys is way smaller than comparative countries' big companies. And, you know, like, it's kind of challenging for me that's a champion for startups and SMEs, which is the small end, is that actually, in this context, for a future, they're irrelevant. Unless those companies can go on to be a Xero or a Vend or a Datacom or others. We need the big guys to be a lot bigger.
Andy, how many of those 2,318 are globally focused?
Next job, find that out. I would say, guessing 40%. And actually might even be less than that, because again, part of a problem, our big guys are banks, insurance companies, who are global, but as it relates to us and the wealth that gets created in New Zealand, it goes somewhere else. That doesn't mean I'm anti-foreign ownership, but ultimately, our big ones are not big enough. And for me, I did this, had to do this talk when I went around the world earlier in the year, and I was trying to think about how I could talk to some expats and Kiwi files about, what the opportunity or the challenge was in New Zealand. Our big guys need to get bigger, and our little guys need to pump into the big. And it's kind of simple, but if you think about it in New Zealand, now, I have license to put this up here because both my daughters play hockey, a house of estrogen, and this is who they look up to. And Anita Punt came and looked at one of my daughter's hockey games with Sir Owen Glenn on Saturday, which was slightly amusing. We produce great talent in New Zealand. Great sports people, great sports teams, and great employees. What we don't do, until more recently, is produce great scaled global companies. let's have a look at what we're good at. I had to say this first one because I was talking to expat Kiwis. There is a great bunch of expat Kiwi files out there. Arguably, I'd say there is no supply constraint. There is a demand issue, right? There's a demand issue of Kiwis going offshore, taking advantage of that talent. We have a whole bunch of cool people coming out as emerging tech and new age leaders. Whole bunch of people who don't want to work for the man anymore coming out of uni, which is fantastic. Good and bad, we have a whole bunch of early stage investors, both knowledgeable and learnt to be knowledgeable, and those learning the game. You know, and then some cool shit going on with people like Kozler investing in 4 companies up in Auckland, Peter Thiel, and the Moynihan brothers. So I say we've got a lot of good stuff on the ambit of trying to create bigger companies from New Zealand. What don't we have? When the new CEO of Fletcher Building came into the role, he was like, that was like the easiest job, easiest contest I ever had. Because he said, you know, every other senior executive in Fletcher Building had never operated internationally. He was like, what the fuck? You've got this global company and all your senior executives live in Remuera or Kandala and operate from there. How does that work? He's like, it's ridiculous. He said, what I want to see is all those senior executives who work for me working around the world, learning how to operate around the world. And then they can come back and lead and drive a global company. I don't want to be negative, but we have poor diversity, and I'm not just talking about chicks and Asians on our big boards. We have really poor diversity. I want every startup that I'm involved with to have someone offshore and to go through the pain of video conferencing, Skyping, different hours, all those sorts of things. On the Icehouse board, we've now got somebody from Chicago, Sean Simpson, and somebody from LA, and Claudia Batten. And you know, sometimes they're at 3 in the morning, they're up on board calls. I don't know what they're doing on the other side, but they're up at that sort of time. I'm not sure we've got a massive supply of entrepreneurs who know how to make it big, globally. And I love investment bankers, but investment bankers are a little bit short-term orientated, particularly in New Zealand. They don't really know how to build global talent, global pools of capital to help many of our companies. That doesn't mean necessarily that there's a shortage of capital in New Zealand, but you know, they're not like the breed that you see in Silicon Valley. Now, there's hope though. This is quite funny because I can't remember what the point of the slide was. I think there is hope.
There's hope that you'll remember the rest of the
No,
slides.
there is hope. There is hope. Why is there hope? Because there are companies like Xero, Vend, Datacom, offshore. All of you know, Weta, da. There's actually believers. You know, and that does make a difference because all of those people are now operating globally, and that creates the opportunity for others to believe in that and see. And I always say to the kids at University of Auckland, don't go and get a Stephen Tyndall, who's amazing to present to a bunch of students. Go and get Fatty, you know, who's the head of engineering at Power by Proxy, who was there within the last decade, you know, because the engineers will look at him and go, shit, I could be like him. But they're never going to look at Stephen and go, I can be like him, because he's a tycoon.
Can I just ask a question? There's
Yeah.
hope, right, about, but Rod almost, you know, Xero seems as an exception, and clearly it is.
I don't think so.
But Rod is unique. There aren't many.
No, I don't think so. Look, he's a Mr. 5 times, you know, so he's done 5 ventures, but there's lots of others around doing the same. There's people who've spun out of lots of exits. I mean, and here's a funny thing, right? Who thought Green Button would be successful from day one? People didn't. Some people thought he was a nutbag. And look at him now. What he's done now, he's revered. He's going on boards and those sorts of things. So I think So I actually think there's quite a lot more, through the angel stuff, we see, us learning how to be better angels, better supportive of entrepreneurs, better investment returns, and we see entrepreneurs coming first time, second time, third time. I think the greatest challenge when you're working with entrepreneurs who are doing it for the first time is their learning curve is never fast enough for the market. And that's the problem, right? Whether, how you can get their learning rate up to take advantage of the opportunity and avoid being screwed by themselves.
Yeah, but no disrespect to Scott from
Yeah.
Button, but he's not a Rod. I mean,
No, he's not. But he still created wealth and had a wedding and is having a good time, doesn't never have to work again.
So I want
It's
to
pretty good.
take it, but I guess we talk about zero, but what is the zero model that is?
Well, look at all those companies that are mimicking, all want to be Rods and want to be Vaughan Rousels. And, the Avatana that spun out of Lanzatech, the Shuttle Rock that was founded by Tim Williams and Johnny Hendrickson. I think there's actually a heap. And the more I go around, the more I look. So, I'm an optimist, right? So I'm an optimist. Personally, I'm indefinitely optimistic. So that's very frustrating for my board, because I often have no plan. But I'm a believer and wake up in the morning and go to be great. It's challenging. Right, pattern matching. Second bit. So just in case you didn't, 0 to 1, this is a great book. These 7 questions that he poses in his book are fantastic. To let you into a secret, again, I just copy other people, right? So when I meet entrepreneurs, I say, give me the answers to these 7 questions. What's really interesting is how they answer that. And that helps me qualify whether or not, they understand what they're doing. So 0 to 1, it's a great book. What I love about it, he says, it's great to be a geek, but if you don't get your shit together, you will fail. If you don't think you have to sell, you will fail. If you don't have a plan, you will fail. So be a geek and get your shit together. Love it. Right, three patterns I want to talk about. The team, word of mouth, and money. I reckon you only need 2 things. Now, before so I've got up there aspiration and competence. Who's in a startup? Okay. All of you in startups, I'm sure, have high aspiration, right? High belief, high dreams. And that's probably weighed a lot, aspiration up here, and I'm not trying to be rude, and your competence might be, for what you're doing, at a different level. I want you to just think about a $20 million SME family business in New Zealand that's been owned for 15 years by an owner manager. What we've observed is the competence for that $20 million business up here, and their aspiration is way down lower. Why is that? Because it's bloody hard running an SME. Interestingly, they had the same imbalance when they started as a startup. Aspiration, go after it, nothing to lose, hunt it, make it happen. And now they've got this great competence and no dream. And so, one of the things we find really interesting with the Icehouse is when you combine those 2, what we do with the startups, or try and encourage them to do, is smack them on the arse, tell them to get into today's reality and find a customer and solve a pain point and just take 1 step. And what we try and do with the owner managers is get them to dream again, and get them to believe again, and get them to think about the future. Final thing I'll say on this, it's really interesting. When you ask an SME family business to describe their vision for their business, it will always be, maybe not always, in today's tense. They define themselves by what they have done and do. But a startup entrepreneur never talks about today's tense, because they haven't made it yet and they're dreaming for something into the future. Team. I was going to put up this photo of me in a My Little Kitty onesie, which I wore on International Onesie Day and had to go and get the coffees for everyone in the Icehouse, which was a fucking nightmare. My daughter bought it for me, but this is the Icehouse team. Maybe half of them are still there. No, most of them are all there. if the challenge is you're trying to do something that you've never done before, and our native action is to do this. We as Kiwis are born to just make it up, work it out, DIY, get there. I want as many more people, now that actually there are a lot more going through cycles, there are a lot more people like the Marcells that have done an exit and know how hard it is to get the green button thing over the line. The filmer Cause, you know, who's involved in one of the businesses I was involved with Dion, with eBus, those sorts of exits, been there, done that. Find people, and my view is build the team of people who've done what you've done before, or as close to as possible, who can work with you to make that happen. And I can't underestimate, all of us are trying to fake it. All of us. And the differences in America and other places, that's just the shit. They know. You're all trying to, and so, but they put people around them who give the impression that they are going to make it. And I'd just like to see us do a lot more. A lot more. Right. Word of mouth. I had to take the piss to say Wellington exporting to Auckland and then global. And I make the point for that because I know Auckland's irrelevant. When you're in Welly, you go offshore. When I'm in Christchurch, I go Christchurch to Wellington to Auckland, and then you're good enough to get to offshore because it just pisses them off. They deserve to be pissed off too. They're a little bit insular down there. One of the pattern matching things that I've noticed is most early stage companies wait to talk about what they have and what they're doing until they have something. And I don't have this image right, but the whole analogy of dropping a pond in a lake, in a river, and letting those ripples go out, and letting them go out wider and wider. In Wellington or in Auckland, you can get to know everyone, right? In my game, I go to Corrie Lounge and shit, I think I know 30% of the people. But that counts for shit if you're trying to get into Mumbai or if you're trying to get into New York. And somehow we've got to get over, and I'm really frustrated. I'm putting a blog out tomorrow saying, because I was thinking there was a business opportunity around communication and how you can be more templated. We talk about virtual CFOs. That virtual CFO thing has become, really big. There should be a virtual CEO or CXO, Chief of Communications. I would love it if more of the entrepreneurs would really think, how do I get word of mouth going? And not just, shit, we need to get word of mouth going because we're raising money. It's not just raising money. It's, getting alpha customers. It's getting beta customers. It's pattern matching. These things here, I think we are terrible at communicating. And it's absolutely okay if you don't have anything to say. Find a reason to say something. Find a reason to be more disciplined, to create believers, not only in your team, but in the people that you talk to. And across all of these things, it's not just, right, we need to create noise because we're raising capital. It's and all these other things. And I've got 5 businesses at the moment that I look at and I go, wow, like they're making it, right? So I've got a business that today sent me a note saying they've just launched in Canada, they're in New Zealand, and they had 800 Skype-type conversations in the last 2 weeks through 20 retail chains, and they clicked money on the way through. And I'm like, why are you not telling someone about this? This is amazing. Look, what's going on? No, we don't know what to do. I'm like, I was just frustrated. My first reaction was I need to go and find a comms person, which is why I'm putting the blog out to go, can you do this shit? If you can, I've got lots of jobs for you. Maybe the entrepreneurs need to be better at this, but I think this discipline and this, how you build momentum into a deal is important. I've got to speed up. One thing I wanted to say in context, coming from Welling, going offshore, That's sort of meant to be a globe ship. You know, it's amazing now how easy it is to get access into Silicon Valley, New York, even Singapore. That accelerator model, I think, works because it makes it a lot easier to get there. You know, the JFDI in Singapore and now Murudi in Singapore, if you're good enough, they'll give you 40, 80 grand to get there. You know, I had one of the Lightning Lab companies say, I don't want to go through another accelerator. I'm like, dickhead, who's going to give you 80 grand for 8% and get you into that market? If you think you can go to Singapore and work it out all yourself and operate in that market, you're a Fruit Loop. Get over yourself and run into that team of 10 and be the best already starting, because all the other guys would never have been in an accelerator. And go like the clappers. I'm thinking about my last slide, which is amazing. Money, we're going to whip through. It is amazing how much money and people there are out there now. Angel HQ in there? Yes it is. Robbie did this slide from Ice Angels. There is a heap of people out there for money now. Raising money has never been easier. I think I said in the, when Nick was like harassing me for what am I going to talk about, I was like, my secret IP for raising capital. Like the word of mouth thing, I just came up with this because I got sick and tired of talking to people who are asking me, how do you raise money? It's just a sales process, right? What everyone does is they jump to, how much money do I need? And they screw that up. As opposed to starting with, actually, what's a business strategy? It sounds really common. All of us in like Icehouse and Creative HQ do that. But, you know, if you start at 2 and you haven't done 1, you're just going to spin wheels. This bit here around, you know, source a bunch of prospective investors is aligned to what's your ideal profile of an investor that you want. You do the layers of the onion, you get right to the core, this is who I want. Because then people like Stefan and me can go into our network and say, who do we know that fits that profile? Of course you get to the 3rd layer before you'll find someone that really, you know, will match and resonate, but it's such a process, right? It's, you know, stole the slide from Scott Nolan, don't tell him because he said don't share it with anyone, so. He talks about, from Founders Fund, capture value, create value, defensible. Going to keep moving. Basically says, wait until you've got something to prove, which is really interesting. Wait until you've got something to prove. Every conversation I have with investors offshore, it's show us your metrics. And if you've got no metrics, what have you got? Only chance you've got is a team, and if you're first-time entrepreneurs, you're fucked. So, don't go and ask someone for money until you actually prove something. Or you can get some money off somebody dumb to prove something. This is a really big thing. Every VC offshore is only interested in something that will scale. I said to the Lightning Lab companies in Auckland last night, there are 9 of them, I said one of you has the chance of scaling like that. The rest of you 8, if you've got VC in your plans, forget it. It will not happen. You will not raise.
Is that the general stats?
No, it's just they don't have, you know, their year 3, year 5 revenues are 6, 8 million. Who gives a toss? That doesn't mean it's not a bad business. It just means if you have an expectation of getting VC from a Sequoia or tier 2 or tier 3, they want to see something that's got massively aggressive scaling. Now, one of the companies has a really interesting marketplace opportunity that could go to network effect, right? But what they have to do for the next 2 years is prove the economic metrics and the opportunity that it could create. So there's no point going for VC yet. They need to prove that they could scale that, and then they may have a chance. I think my point on this is, you know, somebody's been down here. There's a guy called Bill Payne, right? And Susan's here and others from Angel HQ. Even some of us who have been investing small amounts, I invest a really small amount, is if you put 10 ventures in front of an experienced investor, they will immediately work out which of the marbles has the potential to scale versus those that don't. That doesn't mean they're bad businesses, but the first qualifier is, can this scale big? Could this be 100 million in 5 years? put those marbles to the side, get rid of the other ones, and then say, now let's look at the team and the market opportunity and whether I like it. Bill Payne out of the US will get 3 of the 10 right every single time. It doesn't mean he's going to invest in 3, it just means then he looks at the 3. The rest of us who are doing it, you know, he's been doing it since 1972, will get 6 or 7. And it gets quite confusing. Right. It's a flock of sheep. Raising capital is a nightmare. That's challenging, right? I think here's a process that looks quite good. Just follow the box. Could be Angel HQ. That's what it's like. That's hard. Raising capital is hard. Really easy if you can find that lead. Everything else, you know, you put your hand up. If Marcel van der Assen says he'll lead, then all of a sudden you've actually got a chance of momentum and you can keep going. You know, it's the same thing, you know, with a Sam Morgan or a Rowan or others. If you find your lead, and it's what I've been saying to the Lightning Lab companies, find your lead. And it doesn't matter if the lead is 20 grand. You need to find someone that believes in you. If they're a numpty, that does matter. But if they've actually got a bit of reputation and they can cajole others, some of the leads in Auckland, Scott Gilmore, Miles Valentine, Ray Thompson, Janine Manning, they are incredible. They become part of your team. And then they're ringing the investors saying, no, you're investing, no, you're not. What's that? Anyone? Moru, I should have got a photo of the Lightning Lab. Imagine that's a photo of Lightning Lab demo day here in Wellington in May next year. May? Yeah. That's a stage. It's a stage. How many of you have pitched on a stage or pitched at a Angel HQ or other events? Anyone pitched? Yeah, it's just a fucking stage. Right? And sorry to be crass, but it you know, a lot of our entrepreneurs think the stage is what it's all about. All it is an opportunity to build the pipe. I'll tell you the Muru D story. I went to Muru D Lightning demo day 2 weeks ago in Sydney. Within 24 hours of being there and putting my card with one of the interns in this company, I had a follow-up email saying, great to meet you. Know you're from New Zealand. We're interested in coming there, not immediately, but after China. Could you make some suggestions on network points and would you be interested in investing? 24 hours. I reckon they had 160 leads and they followed it up. Here is I've got, this is a company that we raised for Parrot Analytics. This is the template pipeline that we ran on a couple of their fundraising. And I don't want to share it too much, but it kind of goes, who's the party, what's their investing vehicle, who's the owner? So we've got a group of us here who are responsible for following them up. This is the notes, here's the priority, and then this is all, how much money do we think? Have they confirmed, have they committed, have they transferred the money, and then are they, you know, approved for a Financial Market Conduct Act? We ran that process and we had weekly pipeline meetings. Who's responsible for closing him? Who's responsible for closing her? Right? It's quite a nice image. It's better than the other one, was a guy kissing a frog. And I was like, raising money is challenging. A lot of frogs, right? A lot of frogs. And that's okay. What I love about the younger generation is that they don't take it personally. You know, they go, oh, it's not me, it's them. It's quite good, really. I do think building that relationship when you're trying to fake it or make it you can't ask people to invest right from day one, but it's once you build that relationship and you have the ability. I tell a story about investing in Asia. We had a company that came through the Icehouse, expanded to Singapore, and the lead investor on one of the rounds had been on the board for 3 years. of the Singapore entity. And he's quite a big investor. You know, his exit was 2.2 billion. He was only one of 7, so maybe it's, you know. And he was on the board of this company for 3 years, and he announced after 3 years that he was investing in the company. It wasn't we were looking for money. It was like, I'm investing, and if you speak nicely to me, I'll bring 3 other families behind me to invest in the round. Not being afraid to ask people, and like the young say, oh, it's not me, I think it's important. Now, final couple of slides. Parrot Analytics in Auckland, they've raised 4.5 million, right? They had, if you look at their spreadsheet in detail, I don't know, 300 no's? 300 no's. You know, a lot of people who said, no, it's not me. A lot of people who said, really cool, but don't really understand it, don't get it. The round that they raised, including guys from Angel HQ, it's like phenomenal in terms of syndication. And they, you know, the story with this is 3 kids at university going, I don't want to work for the man. What are we going to do? One of them said, I'm quite good at BitTorrent. Shall we do that? What will we do with BitTorrent? I don't know. What about getting that German dude and getting more of guys like him and taking them down? No shit. They started on that weekend that Kim got arrested by the police. Now their business is way different to that. They started with 3 guys going, shit, if it's that important to the US government, maybe there's a business there. Right, final slide. I'm sorry. Would you like me to read it, Stefan? Anyone read it? Okay, shall I read it? I do apologise to all people that I am rude to. Be a fucking wolf. Be a fucking lion. Take no shit. Set goals. Smash them. Eat people's faces off. Be a better person. Show people who the F you are. Never apologise for being awesome. Stay the MF course. It's a bit direct. But you know, like we all do startups and we do companies for the moment, which is a lot of fun around trying to create something from nothing. And you know, all of us have to be salespeople. All of us have to stand up and believe, even when we don't believe. You know, I said before that I'm an optimistic indefinite. I'm also not a person who shakes the foundations of startups because I want to believe that it's possible. And I think, you know, in your team, I mean, ultimately it does come down to this thing, right? It comes down to not I, it comes down to we. And I think, you know, the most important thing I have observed, it's those that go, wow, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I've got a strong vision and a belief. I need to create the impression with having people around me that others will go, wow, if he's got those people around him or her, must be something there. And then you hope like hell you can execute to make true to that. Now, any questions? Sorry, Nick, I think I went on longer than...
You did very well, Andy.
Have you got a question?
No, I don't. I have a question for you. Who's got a question? There you go.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, of course. You've got the floor.
I think that slide with the quadrant about planning and being optimistic or pessimistic is very dangerous because...
Is this a nice comment? Why?
I think being optimistic is really important for motivation.
Yeah.
But there's absolutely no point in planning if you're not being pessimistic about it, because it's just unicorns all the way. You're not learning anything.
Well, you know, there is this theory of academia around entrepreneurship called iterative entrepreneurship. Anyone know what that is? Iterative entrepreneurship means I'm here and I want to get to the next level. And then when I get to that level, I'm going to work out where the next one is. And I'm going to iterate as I go, as I'm dealing, so I'm going to embrace ambiguity and I'm not going to look for certainty. So there's the big field of entrepreneurs who go, as long as I'm heading in that direction, you know, I'll iterate as I go. But I think you know, the point that Peter Thiel makes in his book, if you don't have a plan and a course of direction, you are seriously going to be challenged. And I've given another example. I don't know whether any of you have heard Jamie Fitzgerald speak, or Kevin, his partner, when they sailed across the Atlantic, right? Any of you heard that story? Basically, 10 years of sailing across the Atlantic, there was a tried and tested route that you went to win. And they had a guy called Jeff Leyland, who is this rocket scientist dude, who essentially said, interesting. So he created a map for them, and he put plastic around it because it would be wet out there, and said, every 50 nautical miles, just wherever you are, get to the next line. Don't go back. Don't go back to where the line is. Just get to the next 50. Get to the next 50. And I think of entrepreneurship in that regard. I think you have to have a plan, but you can get too fixated by going way out into the future and becoming too inflexible. So we'll just blame Peter Thiel for that. Anyone else got any questions? Rick, good to see you.
Sorry, I'm late.
No, that's all right, you're here.
That was the
What's that? Anyone else? Yes.
If you've got a business idea and a kind of a startup plan, but you're looking for a web developer to join the team, what's the best kind of way to get your idea in front of people who might be interested?
Find out where they work, where they play, where they hunt. I mean, finding, I don't, whether you guys, I think the shortage of technical skills in New Zealand is about 10,000 people. In our building, Xero are in our building, and Uber in our building in Auckland, and they just hoover. They hoover up the talent. And is that a bad thing? If you're trying to find a web developer, what we do, secret plan with Xero, is have drinks with them and see who we can find who is interested in moonlighting and doing it at night, until it's established a bit more. Don't tell anyone no one here from Xero. But honestly, go where they are, find them. I think there are lots of people out there who would do it. You just got to find where they are. What we've done a bit in our Auckland community is we run a startup flash once a month, and we put jobs in there. So people come to us and say, I'm looking for a web developer. To be honest, we've got no idea whether it works. We still get about 5 or 10 people approaching us a month saying, I'm looking for someone, and we just shove it up on there. But I don't know, Stefan, you got any comments, but my view is just go where they are. Find them. They'll be there, and if you're focused enough on it, you'll find them. Yeah? No comment. Okay, anyone else? Yes?
Seems to be a bit of a conundrum, perhaps, in the discussion regarding the millennials who don't want to work for the woman any longer.
Yeah.
And the goal of creating these Nokias,
Yep.
Googles. So the scale of New Zealand is that a Nokia, a Google could hire all of the graduates in a specific area in New Zealand.
Yep.
In any given year, if not any given 5 or 10 years.
Yep.
So if those millennials or those graduates are then not wanting to work for the man, which is clearly not all of them.
No.
But so the resource constraint raises its ugly head, which
Well,
of course you're operating in a global market, so perhaps it's mitigated. But
so I would say to that is, it's an interesting question if it's your own child and they want to do a startup. What do you say? The law of averages is like this: Y Combinator, 6,500 applications for every run, 160 companies in there, 10 will make it. So you come here, every 9 or 10 through a lightning lab, 1 or 2 are going to make it. There's going to be shitloads of failure, and isn't it great? You learn more from failure than success. What's going to happen to those is that they're going to go, so I encourage people to do a startup, and 95, 98% of them will fail. They're a way better employee, once they've done that. And it's not harsh, but I think that's the reality, right? So I think, the more people get into the industry, the more people get into the sector, then they start to realise how hard it is. And they then go, hey, my skill's a CTO. I need that flash Harry personal guy or girl who can sell like anything, maybe who's been there before. And you feel that, some of you know Serge, Serge from MCOM, who's down here, Adam, Graham, other guy, 4 founders. They're phenomenal, right? They've done an exit, and now they're working with a whole lot of others. And so, for me, I'm not worried about it. I just think, a lot of startup people will do it and go, this is quite hard. Because the law of averages, very few succeed, which is a massive challenge for us as investors and for government supporting places like this. It's bloody hard to get a good outcome. I think the skills and talent that is created as a result makes a big difference, right? Anyone else? Anyone else?
Just on the skills and talent, do you think organizations respect that or get that here in New Zealand? Like even government organizations or the bigger corporates, the guys that go through that are that much more valuable?
I think, the thing I would say about that is, I would say the New Zealand corporates generally have a challenge around being isolated from highly competitive markets offshore and scale, and maybe are not as open to innovation or don't have as much confidence around how they do that. And when you go to America, you go to Israel, you go to Europe, they're a lot more sophisticated because they have people, processes, strategies, execution plans to be more innovative. I mean, I've seen through Rick, who's just arrived and is late. Thanks for the beers tonight, Rick. Through Rick sponsoring of us into Telstra, we saw how disciplined Telstra are in proceeding down an innovation path, making massive bets and little bets. And, it was inspiring, because I think most corporates are a freaking nightmare, right? And many of us in this room have worked with them. I don't think it's their fault. They're just organised that way to go after that, and it takes the rest of us to work out how do we get them on that path to doing things. I mean, one of the cool things with Lightning Lab is that with Creative and us, we were able to get Spark to put interns or put secondments, 2 staff and lab techs into the Lightning Lab in Auckland, and then in Wellington and Christchurch. Now, all of a sudden those barriers start to come down. All of a sudden you've got people being transferred there, then opening up the rest of that organisation. All of a sudden saying, hey, that's pretty cool, lean startup canvas, that's pretty cool, maybe we could do that. And I think that, you can be cynical, or you can go, wow, we've actually got some momentum going. Right, anyone else? Yes?
Yeah, you talked about the big companies in New Zealand not being big enough and needing to grow.
Yep.
One of the key ways, one of the ways that big internationals, multinationals grow is by acquiring smaller startups.
Yep.
Up-and-coming players. Do you think it's a good strategy for a startup in New Zealand to look for acquisition or exit to a large New Zealand company? And do you think those large New Zealand companies have got enough competitive advantage to make those acquisitions when if it's a global startup?
Okay, so a few questions. What I would say is the great, I don't know, like if you're a first-time entrepreneur, I reckon you should always, at every point in your life cycle, be going, who could buy this? Why would they buy it? And what am I prepared to sell it for? Because this day and age, I don't think, unless you're exceptional, and everyone who's been massively successful forgets publicly the times that they are struggling, right? So if you can sell and crystallise value and learn, oh my God, like getting acquired and then learning how much money they make from your asset and how little they paid for it when, if you just negotiated better, you'd get way better. So my attitude would be always think who could buy this, why would they buy it, and see if you can crystallise that value. Now, whether or not you accept it or not is another point. But once you've done 1, 2 or 3 exits, you become incredibly valuable experience, right? So this founder of eBus, a guy called Carmine Marciello, to distraction, every single point in the life cycle, he would try and sell it. Because he just wanted to know what the market was for that business, right? And I think though when we're in it, we think this is massive, this is massively valuable, I don't want to sell out too early. But if in your life, how old are you? 34. 34, oh, you look younger than that. So at 34, you know, you've probably got 2 or 3 more startups in you, if that's what you want to do. And if you can, you know, if you can crystallise that value, and by the way, if you have the energy to do it. So a lot of it comes down to your, I mean, I know the MCOM founders don't want to do, at this point, don't want to do another gig. You know, because they're going, oh, being an entrepreneur is really hard. Now, some of them are just tricking themselves. You know, because they're finding actually being an investor, supporting entrepreneurs when you're a control freak is challenging. Not Serge, don't anyone go and tell Serge I said that. Because with a last name Van Dam, you end up in trouble. One last question. No, I'm just going to finish. Hey, oh, there we go. Oh, you still haven't merged with that company. I tried to tee it up.
So you said you talked about a plan. So what's your main things that you think about the plan should have in, if you should have direction in the plan?
So look, I'm not. God, who reads a business plan anymore, right? If you can't, you know, elicit, describe, draw what the strategy is, you know, in 5, 6 slides or a couple of pages, and what you're aiming for, you know, what the next, this is the next value creation point, and when I get there, it'll give me this opportunity to create that. You know, for me, it has to be near term, but there also needs to be context around the unit economics of your business. By getting to that point, I'll prove this, or I'll answer this question, which will enable us then to chart to the next path. I think, you know, it's really hard when you start up in the first 5 years to say our, you know, 10-year revenues will be this. Who knows? It's just a bunch of us. But if you can describe the unit economics of what you think you will create, or the opportunity it will give you, then I think all of a sudden investors start to go, okay, is this a scaling one or not? And here's a point, right? Angel investors, we're not really looking for $100 million businesses. We're actually looking for the businesses that could be sold for 20 to 40 million. Because when we see a $100 million business, we go, that's going to require a lot of money, and that's going to require VC, and the law of averages are low, and lots of VCs screw the people in the middle out. It's nothing against the VCs. We love Movac, but you just got to be mindful. It's not, you know, we've got a business at the moment that's raising that's probably would never get more than 12 million revenue, but it'll make about 3 or 4 on the bottom line if they can prove what they're doing, and that's, you know, we're actually pretty happy with that. We've got some of our best investments. I think in Ice Angels we've got 2 exits coming this year, turning over 4 and 6 million. And they'll be sold for 25 to 30 million, and we'll make the investors in there, not me, and one of them will make 3 to 8 times our money. That's good, man. You know, and the entrepreneurs, most importantly, will make 5 to 8 out of that, which is good enough if you look after your money well. All right, Nick, we're done. Thank you very much for being here.
We're really privileged to have Andy spend this much time with us, because as you can see, he's very busy trying to make the startups that he looks after all over the country. So look, once again, thanks for coming along. I've got 3 tips if you're looking for talent. Make it worth their while, figure out what you've got to offer them. Get along to Startup Garage. If you send me an ask, I will put it out to this community, which is 700 strong. And thirdly, shake your own tree. There's not enough people that go to people they know and say, we really need someone like this. The last 2 hires we got for Creative HQ, it's just me shaking the tree, and we've got a couple of really awesome people from really awesome organisations. So don't look too far from home. Lastly, I'd just like to give a big thanks to I Want My Name, a local domain registrar. They sponsor these events, and they help us with the beer that you're all drinking and the pizza which is about to arrive to give you some dinner. Okay, so make sure you come along to the next Startup Garage if you're interested. We've got the Global Accelerator Network next Tuesday, and I've got a couple more that are going to come live in about the next week. So if there's anyone, again, if there's anyone you want to see, where you want to go, we're all ears. Thanks very much for coming along.